Diabetes Connections is brought to you by the OneTouch brand, providing diabetes management solutions for people living with diabetes, including the OneTouch VarioFlex blood glucose meter and the OneTouch Reveal mobile app. Taking a step forward starts with seeing where you are. And by Dexcom. Take control of your diabetes with the world's first continuous glucose monitoring system that sends glucose readings directly to your compatible smart device. Live life on your own terms with Dexcom. Hi, it's Stacey. You know this podcast is not intended as medical advice. If you have those kinds of questions, please contact your healthcare provider.
This is Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
This week, he's lived with type 1 for more than 55 years and was one of the first people ever to use an insulin pump and later a CGM. In fact, Yerachmiel Altman was one of the first people to make the switch from 2 shots a day to what we now call multiple daily injections, MDI, almost 40 years ago.
So I basically went back to school, adamant that anyone interested in medicine or nursing or in any way interested in needles was going to learn how to do it. And you can imagine my dorm counselor was not very happy. Are you teaching people to shoot up? I said, yeah, you want to learn?
Altman shares his story. He's an engineer and a computer scientist who worked for D-Tech companies and why he now wants to help educate kids and adults about living with type 1 through books and games. Plus, Noah's March is at an end. We first met this family in January when they set off from Florida to Washington State, crossing the country for diabetes awareness and to raise money for research. And thinking about those New Year's resolutions yet? How Diabetes Strong can help you start 2018 off in a great way. It all starts now on Diabetes Connections. Welcome to another week of the show. I'm glad to have you along. And if you're new, hey, welcome. We aim to educate and inspire here, all about type 1 diabetes by sharing stories of connection. We talk to athletes and artists and inspirational folks, leaders in our community, as well as the healthcare companies and the tech people who are trying to help us out. I have a child who has type 1 diabetes. My son, Benny, was diagnosed in 2006, just before he turned 2. He is about to turn 13, 11 years of this nonsense. My husband has type 2, and I don't have diabetes, but I have a background in local TV and radio news, and that's how you get the podcast. A little bit of housekeeping before we go on with our interviews today. We are now on Spotify. Spotify is opening itself up to more podcasts, and we are thrilled to be on that platform. So however you listen to the podcast, however it works for you is great for us, trying to make it as easy as possible. So if you don't already know, maybe you're listening on social media or just on the website. Either of those is fine. But if you want to take it with you more easily, we are on every podcast app I can think of. The main ones, Apple Podcast app, Spotify now, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. I listen to most podcasts on the Apple Podcast app, but like I said, however it works for you is great. And we are just thrilled to reach more people now on Spotify. Talking to Yerachmiel Altman in just a couple of minutes. And I'm always, I guess inspired is the right word, but also a little amazed maybe when I talk to people who live with type 1 for so long, 55 years for him, and not just because of their grit, but because when they show me pictures of the equipment, and I've put these up on Facebook, but when they show me pictures of what they used, I'm thinking, how did you do that? I mean, the needles are huge. Everything looks uncomfortable. It's slow. Maybe in 20 years when we look back at what we're using now, we'll think, oh my gosh, how did we do it? Because I guess you just use what's in front of you. But man, so go ahead, go to the Diabetes Connections Facebook page and you can see the pictures. Better yet, the Facebook group. That's really the best place to see everything involved with the show now. But I will post some of the pictures that he sent me, and they are really pretty amazing. He's been in this for a long time. So before we get to Mr. Altman, let me tell you about one of our sponsors, about OneTouch. And OneTouch has been a trusted brand in blood glucose management for more than 30 years. This year, U.S. News & World Report named OneTouch the #1 pharmacist recommended in blood glucose monitoring devices and lancets, based on a survey of pharmacists nationwide. Find out more about the OneTouch brand products at diabetes-connections.com and click on the OneTouch logo. This time of year, we're just trying to get through the holidays, I'm sure, but some smart people among us are looking forward to January and those New Year's resolutions, and 2018 really just a couple of weeks, maybe days away, depending on when you're listening to this episode. And I want to tell you about something called the Diabetes Strong January Fit with Diabetes Challenge. This is free. It's a 4-week challenge. A team of top diabetes experts are going to take you through some of the most important things you need to know about diabetes and exercise, healthy nutrition, weight management, specifically with diabetes. This challenge offers peer support. There's a closed Facebook group. There are great weekly prizes. And we're actually going to be talking to the host, to Crystal Oram, in the new year. But because the challenge here starts on January 3rd, and we are not going to be talking to her until later in January, I wanted to make sure if you're interested in signing up for the challenge, you could do so. More information at diabetes-connections.com or in the show notes wherever you're listening, except on Facebook, I think. There are show notes that go with the podcast. You can usually click like more here, whatever the apps all have different ways to show this, but you can always go to diabetes-connections.com and get all of the links associated with each episode. And that's pretty cool. So if you're thinking about making a change, check out the folks over at Diabetes Strong. And hey, how about Dexcom? We got our Warrior Call, their big November Diabetes Awareness Month challenge and campaign. We got ours just in the nick of time on the very last day of the month. But whenever you posted something with the WarriorUp hashtag, Dexcom donated money to different diabetes charities. And they announced at the end they raised $100,000 for research. I'll link up where all that money went if you'd like to learn more about it. But that was pretty cool stuff, and it was a lot of fun. And it was interesting to see how everybody interpreted a warrior call. Benny, my son, of course, just yelled, and he got a bunch of friends to do so as well. But there's some pretty creative videos there. It was fun to watch them. More about Dexcom. And as you know, we've been dealing with type 1 diabetes for almost 11 years. Benny was diagnosed in 2006 when he was a tiny toddler. I'd heard about the teen years, but like a lot of parents, I thought we'd be different. But you know what? Those physical changes, those hormone swings, I cannot imagine managing diabetes during this crazy time without the Dexcom continuous glucose monitoring system. Benny is now 5'7". I think he's grown 4 inches in the last year and a half. And we can react more quickly to highs and lows and adjust insulin doses with advice from our endocrinologist. I know the G5 Mobile is helping improve Benny's A1C. CGM-based treatment requires finger sticks for calibration, may result in hypoglycemia if calibration not performed or symptoms expectations do not match CGM readings. For more information, go to diabetes-connections.com and click on the Dexcom logo. My guest this week has a pretty unusual story. Diagnosed with type 1 at the age of 2 in the early 1960s, Yerachmiel Altman went from 2 shots a day to multiple daily injections to one of the first insulin pumps in the U.S. and then one of the first CGMs. Now, remarkably as well, he worked on the technology he wears as an engineer and computer scientist who was employed by Minimed and later Medtronic. Now Altman has children's books and a game, Insulinopoly. We'll talk about that. And after the interview, of course, I'll tell you how you can get them. Some of them are free. Really great stuff here. So Mr. Altman is a 50-year Joslin medalist, which means the Joslin Center for Diabetes in New England has certified he's lived with diabetes for that length. And they have their own research and super private Facebook group. I bring it up because he references it a couple of times and he mentions a few people who are in it. So just in case you hadn't heard about it. All right. Here is my interview with Yerachmiel Altman. Yerachmiel, thank you so much for spending some time with me. It's been fun reading about everything you've done and all your cool projects. But you know about diabetes as a kid because you were diagnosed as a very small child, right? You were just a toddler.
2 years old.
Wow. Well, I'm not going to ask you what you remember, but
nothing.
Yeah, of course.
I literally, I don't remember first shots. I don't remember not being, which in truth, I now regard having friends who've got it at later ages. It probably saved my life.
What do you mean? Tell me a little bit more about that. You were so used to it, the routine?
Yeah, you never got into bad habits. I mean, think about somebody who gets it as a teenager, right? They're used to going out with their friends. They're used to going out partying, drinking, whatever they're doing, eating whenever, hitting the local, hamburgers, whatever. And all of a sudden, it's like you have to change your whole lifestyle. And, growing up, my parents were really careful that everything at home for everybody was the same. So you never felt different. Everybody ate the same.
You have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, there's 5 of us together.
Wow. Where do you fall in that?
I'm second.
Okay. Yeah, and so back then, too, we're talking about a time before, let alone CGMs and everybody having, home meters. This is where you're testing your blood sugar once a day, once a week?
You didn't have it back then.
Right.
Every 3 months at the doctor.
Wow.
You basically, I started on Clinitest.
Clinitest was basically the old way they used to do the sugar. I can't remember the name of the test. Richard Vaughn actually told me the whole story, how it used to be done. They used to actually make the chemicals and, have to cook it by hand.
Yeah, it looked like a science experiment at home.
Right. It was a science experiment at home. So at some point, Ames came out with a all-in-one pill that you threw into this test tube with the urine and the water. And it, bubbled around for 60 seconds or 90 seconds, whatever it was, and then you compared it to a color chart. So the first trick is I was completely colorblind as a kid.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
Right. So think about every time you do a urine test, you've got to show it to a family member.
God.
It did kind of get rid of cheating on your tests because you couldn't really tell them it was negative when they were reading it, not you. But I remember, we were going, when I went to camp as a kid, so you had 200 kids lined up with bottles of urine coming to the infirmary to do their testing.
Oh, my gosh. So you went to diabetes camp?
Today. I went to camp when I was in probably 3rd or 4th grade, and my mom freaked out. This was wild. I remember my mom screaming, my dad sending me off to die. She couldn't imagine me away from home for a night. And my dad said if he doesn't go and learn to live on his own, he'll never be able to.
Oh, my gosh. Do you remember what you were thinking?
But that was what it was back then.
Yeah.
I don't remember having any negative thoughts or anything. I just figured that I'm going to camp. I was really fortunate. Other than a DKA at 4 years old, which by then was already an ancient memory, you know what I mean?
Mm.
At 8, I can think of 4 years old, I got sick in the summer and with some kind of a flu or cold or something. And you don't know all the details that happened when you were out. I didn't find out till years later. You just write it off. You're a kid, you're in a hospital, so what? I don't think up until probably junior high school time, I had a real recognition of what this is all about, and then really being interested in chemistry and stuff. As soon as I could learn, my dad started teaching me the chemistry of the whole thing.
That's pretty cool.
I remember when my doctor did A1Cs way back. I remember in high school him doing A1Cs, and I really enjoyed it because he had a centrifuge. He spun the blood in his own office. That was before they did him out of the office. And so I used to love going in for an A1C because I got to play with the centrifuge.
It's amazing, isn't it, what affects us as kids?
Yeah, right. Well, my dad being a chemical engineer used to do his labs in the, when he would set up a new facility, he would set up in the basement, whatever he was going to make.
Wow.
And so he had an organic lab in the basement all the time. So I was used to this kind of stuff.
And remind me, is that what you've done for your career? Your computers or chemical engineering?
I did both. And this was prior to the pump. Imagine going double major, computing and chemical engineering. And in the meantime, my dad said, you got to get into research. So I did research for the psych department doing visualization of perceived motion. Like, when the clouds go in front of the moon, and it looks like the moon's moving. We were doing computer graphics like 30 years ago before anybody was doing it, using an oscilloscope and D-to-A converters.
Where were you in school?
To do this stuff. Cornell.
Oh, okay.
And even that, that was the first time it hit me, because every time I caught a cold and went to the doctor for an antibiotic, they stuck me in the infirmary. Because
you needed it? Because they were scared of you?
Because they were scared.
Yeah.
And my senior year, I lost my vision during the beginning of second semester, somewhere middle second semester, spent literally 2 or 3 months because they were certain it was neurological, busted in both eyes. And they said it's impossible to lose vision in both eyes. Well, it turned out when I finally got to an ophthalmologist, he said, you probably lost vision in one eye 6 months or a year ago and never realized it, just from looking at the eyes, because one was worse than the other. Then he said, you can't do laser because one's right over the optic nerve and the other's right over the macula. So if you laser the eye, you'll just sever the optic nerve, you'll blind the macula, i.e. it's not worth doing because it's going to blind you anyway.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, then he told me, but you're very fortunate. I said, really? You know, I'm ready, you know, I'm ready for this. Yeah, because you're still able to walk and you still have your kidneys.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he gave me the time. And then he gave me the timeline. He literally gave me 2.5 years.
To live?
Yeah. Oh, he drew it out. He said, here's the stats. Here's what you got. And, you know, it's kind of like, and my dad said, whatever it takes, I will help you, but you've got to fight. He said, either jump off a bridge and end it quick or fight and make it. And I went on the pump. It took, at that point, from when I wanted it to when I got it, about 3 months.
Not bad.
That was the original auto syringe AS6.
Wow. Did it help?
And
you know you're still here, but did it help in the short term?
Did it help? By the end of that summer, I got it in June. Actually, I know almost exactly because I have the letter my doctor wrote to the insurance agent. I am certain I was the first person to get a pump covered by insurance. It only took 2 years. By the time I got coverage on the first pump, I was on my 5th. They were all follow-ons, so they were just kind of covered by auto syringe back then.
Wow.
You know, they just moved to this model. But
what year would that have been? What year would that have been that you got the first pump?
June of 81.
Wow.
I got my first glucose monitor a year and a half earlier. I went on MDI beginning of my junior year. And up until then, it was like 1, maybe 2 shots a day.
Right.
And here I am going back to school on 5 shots a day. You know, it's like, yeah, right, where am I going to stick this? And so I basically went back to school, adamant that anyone interested in medicine or nursing or in any way interested in needles was going to learn how to do it. And you can imagine my dorm counselor was not very happy. Are you teaching people to shoot up? I said, yeah, you want to learn? What were you going to do?
Did your friends help you out? I mean, did other people give you the shots?
Oh, yeah, no. I had a whole lineup.
That's great.
They used to sign up. It was really kind of funny. They had a whole sign-up sheet who's giving me the next shot.
Did your vision come back?
Yeah, by the end of that summer, I was able to return to school.
Oh, that's fantastic. When
I went back to the eye doctor in the fall, he almost fell over.
What a great story.
You know, he said, what kind of magic is it? I said, this is no magic. It's control.
And now you're doing all these things to, you've got all these great projects to help kids and to help parents, too, through a diagnosis. Tell me a little bit about the books and about the game that you've been working on.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I've worked on pumps since I've been on them, and I've worked on the technology. The bionic pancreas stuff was already started when we did the first CGM, which I worked on. Right away we had the idea of using it. But I always felt the missing piece wasn't so much the tech, it was the education. And so I was always looking, what way can you teach people that they're going to be able to swallow it without it being painful? Dr. Ponder, who wrote Sugar Surfing, told me once that if people make it through the first 15 pages, he feels fortunate. He said people just don't have the patience. And so I started thinking, what do people like to do, right? They play games, computer games. They'll sit in front of a computer for 12 hours and play games. And I said, why not use the technology? So first I did the Insulinopoly game as a word game, kind of just playing around, as I don't know, it was kind of like almost a hobby playing with it. But I realized when I started pricing out what it would take to make it as an actual game, it just became ridiculous because you'd have to print everything, specific to the game, and you didn't have enough copies. Your minimum, you'd have to make 1,000 copies, and it would end up costing almost $30 a copy. Wow. And then you still have to fold it and cut it and put it in a box. By the time you ship it and advertise, what are you going to charge for it? $50?
Yeah.
And this is for somebody who's newly diagnosed, right? They don't have sense by then, with all the stuff they've got to buy. So I just said, this is not going to work. So I figured with my computer background, why not do it that way? And so I started to design basically a computer game. In the meantime, there was a 7-year-old boy diagnosed in the area that we live. Clergyman asked me to help the family. My wife is an RN, so we went together to their house. And, these are new parents, 7-year-old boy, and they're looking at me up and down, up and down. I'm thinking, like, what did I do wrong? And finally I said, there's something wrong. And the mother says, you're so old. What do you know about childhood diabetes? Listen, I'll tell you the truth. I was recently in the hospital, and I get the record, type 2 diabetic.
Oh.
You're too old to be a type 1.
Don't you wish you could outgrow it?
Well, my response was, how long do I have to wait to hit type 3? And when do I hit type 4? When am I done with the whole thing? And so maybe I can outgrow it. Yeah,
Oh, man.
55 years, I should be done with it already.
Wow.
So the books came out. I wrote the book for that boy.
Oh.
Because I looked at what the ADA had out, the beautiful Walt Disney book, and it is the most PC book imaginable. The child becomes diabetic, and Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse and all the beautiful, the graphics in it, I wish I could afford that. It's absolutely stunningly beautiful, and they have it online where it'll read it to you and move and everything else. But it's like, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. You're just like every other child. Really? So why am I taking all these shots? Why do they keep sticking me with needles? And I said, it's not real. And I said, okay, it's me, right? I'm a diabetic. I'm looking at it wrong. So I said, wife's a nurse, show it to her. She looked at it and she says, there's no way you can show this to, it's a lie. You're fooling the child and you're going to mislead them. And so I decided, it wasn't that I went to write a book. I just said, I got to do something to present to him stuff he can understand. And, being an engineer, have the stuffed animals. The only books an engineer ever reads are Dr. Seuss. I actually did a book report once on Cat in the Hat. So,
Excellent.
So that's really where they came from. The book I'm working on now, I actually took the Cat in the Hat and put it in one column, and I'm writing in the column next to it the new book, just to keep me in rhythm and rhyme.
That's funny. So if someone isn't familiar with the Coco books, as you mentioned, from Lily and Disney and your books, what's the main difference? Is it, when you talk about Coco really not telling the whole story, is it because life goes back to normal, as you said, she can eat anything, she can go anywhere? Is that what you're trying to get to the bottom of?
Well, what I want to get to is you can do anything. I have that whole page with the pictures of the animals doing like every job in the world, right? You can fly an airplane, you can go in a tank, you can be a nurse, you can be a doctor, you can be a plumber, you can be a miner. You can do almost any job as long as physically and mentally you're capable of it, but you've got to be in control. And so the book has a whole section on, when the kid gets diagnosed and when the kid is controlled, and learning about a low sugar and a high sugar and, taking care of that. And yeah, you can go to school because you have the tools. I'm not really dealing with it from a medical point of view in that I'm not doing anything with diet. I'm not choosing a diet. I've learned over the years, everybody's got their perfect diet plan. When I first put out the book, there was a picture in it of what to eat when you're low, and a CDE who's also a type 1 took me to the carpet for the picture of what I had for eating when you're low. Oh. Because she's on, the high fat, the keto diet.
Right.
That's the wrong thing to eat. And so, you try to steer away from that because it's not a medical book and I don't want to have to deal with that stuff.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't do diets or, much on this show because everybody does have a different way of eating, and many people are convinced that there is only one way and it's their way. So I don't blame you about that. Yeah. Oof.
And it depends on when you came in and who hit you with the. I am a big fan of Pritikin, even though I'm not 100% Pritikin. Why? Because when I lost my vision, I went out and looked and saw what was available, and Pritikin seemed to make the most sense. If it had been 5 years earlier, I would have seen whatever was then.
Right.
It was 10 years later, it would have been whatever was then.
Right.
I mean, all of these diets work for certain groups of people. The question is what they do 20 years later.
Right, and what can you actually eat every day instead of thinking about it as
Right.
a diet? That's the challenge that I, as a person without diabetes, struggle with. So I can only imagine what it's like for people who have it.
Well, thank God, I really like veggies and stuff like that. So we're on a really heavy veggie diet. And so, for me, it really works. But I know a lot of people who, would look at what I'm eating and say, where's the food?
Right, my 12-year-old son probably.
So that's the thing. You have to find what you like and make it work.
Right. So you mentioned working on CGMs, working on pumps.
Right.
And you've been in this for a long time. What do you like about what's out and coming out now? And what are you frustrated with that you really think should be available already?
My biggest frustration is I feel we haven't moved forward since the ASMP, which probably doesn't mean anything to you.
No, what
as a
is
name.
that?
Okay, the original auto syringe pumps all had AS as their first two as their name, and then it was a star, and then whatever, 6, 8, MP, whatever the model was. The Ugly was also, you may have heard of a Ugly, although you're probably not that old. The Ugly was their first quote-unquote smaller pump, although the Ugly next to a Tandem or the new Minimed is twice the size. But it was half the size of the original. But in any event, the ASMP was their first pump that had multiple basal rates, that had a temporary basal, that had programmable, the other one you pressed the button to get a bolus, and you held the button down while it was delivering. And it had one basal rate. In fact, my first pump had one basal rate that you set by diluting the insulin.
Oh.
And then back calculating, then you had to back calculate at diluted insulin what a thousandth of a cc was worth in terms of units, which was why the doctor wanted me on it a year before I went on it, because he figured with my background in computers, I could do the math for everybody.
But it has changed since then. I mean,
Oh, well, yeah, but no, since the MP, in terms of features, very little. They've gotten smaller. They've gotten a little more reliable, although reliability-wise, I'm not crazy about it. They still have a lot of the same issues. You don't get runaways anymore, thank God. But other than that, they haven't really advanced too much.
What do you mean by runaways?
Yeah, another great feature from the old days. It used to happen every so often. You'd pass by like a 240 power line, or you'd go through a bank, or the machine would just kind of get a static charge, and all of a sudden it would just start delivering.
Oh my gosh.
Everything. Yeah, it would just go into and it wouldn't tell you. It would just start delivering. And, if you kind of kept an eye on things, you'd kind of notice that it was delivering and not being asked to deliver, and it just kept going. And it's like, wait a second, what are you doing?
Oh my gosh.
And I had one of those, it was my freshman year. It was my first year wearing it. It was my last year in college, and I'm sitting up on a bunk bed with a friend, studying for a test. I'm like, that's really weird, that thing's firing off. And I realized it was going, and what do you do? At that point, you pull the needle out of it.
Yeah.
These were the old pumps, so you didn't have a lot of options. So I just pulled the needle out. And, I said to my friends, all right, guys, we got 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Go out and get anything sweet.
Wow.
I think I ate a week's worth of food in 15 minutes.
Yeah, I bet. Double ice cream sundaes. Man.
Yeah.
What do you use now, if I can ask? You don't have to share if you don't want to. I'm just curious.
I'm on a Tandem. I had been on a Minimed for years since I worked for them. Mm-hmm. And I had so many issues with the pump and the CGM. I just, I moved up to the Boston area, went to Jocelyn, which is another story entirely. But the doctor said the issues I was having were caused by the pump and CGM, and I have to get off of it. Well, it turns out they weren't caused by the pump and CGM. They were caused by insulin resistance. Ah. Yeah, and when I went back and said, what do I do about the insulin resistance when I proved it wasn't that? He said, well, there's nothing you can do about it. Too bad. That happens to long-term diabetics. And, so in the meantime, I had to figure it out on my own. There are a bunch of people using type 2 drugs to handle it. But because of the length of pumping and whatever, they didn't want me on the type 2 drug.
Yeah.
Because I'm their poster child. Yeah, it's like really ugly. You know, you get into a position where you're doing well, and all of a sudden they stop you from moving forward.
Wow.
But where would I want to be? I don't believe the bionic pancreas is the way to go, and I know that's a really not nice thing to say. But from knowing the math and the science behind it, you don't have the capability electronically to do it.
You mean the glucagon part of it, or?
Well, the glucagon, forget it. I don't believe that's the way to go anyway. The body doesn't make enough glycogen long term. And glucagon can only cure certain kinds of those.
Yeah. Listen, I hear you're in your doctor's office, so I know I got to let you go in a minute or two. Before I let you go, though, what do you like? It doesn't have to be a pump. It doesn't have to be tech. You know, what makes you hopeful for the next 55 years?
What makes me hopeful? Seeing the number of people making it, seeing how we've figured out how to do it. Most of the long-term people I know, being a medalist, so you meet more and more 50-plus year people, have figured it out. I would say 98% of us did it on our own.
And now we can learn from you.
Well, but that's the thing. We've got to go out and teach, which is what I'm trying to do. I think education is the real thing. I would love to do that electronic game, but think about what it's going to take.
Yeah.
You've got to have the pump companies or the meter companies or somebody, the insulin company, somebody's got to get behind it, because what I really want to do is walk a person through normal days with his pump, with his meter, with his sensor, and give him real scenarios, right? And have it not only teach, but let's say you're going to sit down and have a meal. So you enter it in, and there's your test. And if you don't know how, it teaches you how. So it's not only teaching you, but it's helping you. You know, it's kind of like an aid on your side.
Well, we'll put the word out, and you never know. Maybe somebody will hear it or want to help or keep us posted on the progress that you make. And I'd love to follow up with you and talk some more. This was terrific. Thank you so much.
You're listening to Diabetes Connections with Stacey Sims.
And more information about Insulinopoly and the books and Altman's story at diabetes-connections.com. You know, some of the materials are free, and there's a lot of really good stuff there. He talked a lot about Dr. Seuss there, and I don't know if it was clear in the interview, but this book, the first book is called I Can Help Take Care of Me, is a poem. It's a rhyming poem, and it's a guide that could walk a child with type 1 and their caregivers through it. It doesn't include specific medical issues, and I think that's a great idea. That needs to be handled by the family's medical people. But it's very much in the style of Dr. Seuss, as he mentioned. And then there's another book. It's called A Moose in the Winter with a Pump. And that one's really cute as well. And what's nice about this one is it includes siblings. You know, it's really it's not just about the kid, it's about the family. So, you know, more information, as I said, and some of this is in ebook form. I was really glad to get the opportunity to talk to him. It was a lot of fun, and I didn't know half his story, so man, very interesting there. On the other end of the spectrum, in terms of living with type 1 diabetes, let's talk about Noah's March. And I say the other end of the spectrum because Noah's a kid. Noah is now 11 years old. I think he was 10 when I talked to him early this year. We spoke in January because Noah Barnes and his family have crossed the country for diabetes awareness. They started in Key West, Florida in January. They are ending up in Washington State. I believe the march finishes in Blaine, Washington. And as I'm recording, it has not yet finished, but it is a day or two away. And Noah really wanted to do this. I'll link up the episode in January where we really explained why. But in a nutshell, he had heard about other people who had crossed the country by foot and thought this would be a really interesting way to raise money and awareness for type 1 diabetes. And his family said, yep, we're going to make it happen. They homeschooled and they figured out a way. They already homeschooled, but they figured out a way to make this happen. There are 2 younger children in the family, but Noah and his dad are basically walking 20 to 26 miles 6 days a week. It's been a wild experience. So first you're going to hear from Joanne, his mom, then Noah himself, and then Dad, Robert. And I started out asking Joanne, you know, how are you guys doing?
Oh my gosh, everyone is Doing pretty good. I think everyone's excited that the end is near. Yeah, everyone's been feeling well. Noah is doing pretty great. I mean, yes, he gets tired at the end of the day, obviously, but everyone has just been doing well. We've been healthy and just excited. It's been an adventure.
Just start out today. Where are you all, and how long till the finish? You guys are really close.
We're very close. December 9, we're scheduled to finish. And today, physically, we're in DuPont, Washington, but they will be starting in Lakewood. And they'll get as many miles in as they can. But we do have a meetup this afternoon, and it's going to be a little bit clumsy because there's people that want to meet Noah, but they still need to get a couple miles in so we can just inch our way to our finish line. So it's going to be a busy day.
When I spoke to you, it was really almost a year ago. You hadn't yet started. Yes. Looking back, what would you go and tell yourself last December? Would you still do it?
Oh, my gosh. I've actually thought about that. I mean, before we started, I just remember all that stress. And I carried a lot of the stress through the year. And it was hard for me personally to enjoy this until probably around Kansas and Colorado. And then I actually started to relax and just enjoy the journey, because this is such a unique way of seeing the country. It's such a unique perspective on life and even our North American culture. So, I mean, it's been fun in retrospect, but what I tell myself, maybe just to relax and kind of sit back and enjoy the journey just a little bit more, because I've been a stressed out mom for most of the year.
What was the turning point? Was it just that, hey, listen, we're almost, we're more than halfway done? Was it people you met along the way?
I can't pinpoint a turning point. I think it was, we were just so far committed at that point. We were halfway done. We had made it that far. What's another 2,000 miles?
Tell me a little bit about the people that you have met along the way.
Oh my gosh, we've met such awesome people. It's been absolutely incredible. Americans are good people. We live in a great country, and people are, for the most part, really good. We haven't met too many nasty people. They're still out there. I think people are just angry. But overall, people that we've had contact with, people that we've stayed with, there's just so many nice people out there. And when they'd meet our family, we stayed with people we didn't know. We stayed with strangers. Mm. And by the time we'd leave, we were great friends. So it's just interesting. People, they want to be helpful. They want to do the right thing. And people just generally want to be good. And that was certainly an eye-opener, because I think we just gear ourselves up that people are going to be bad or out to get you. Mm. And it's not necessarily the case. And don't walk around, naive and thinking everything's going to be la-da-da. But overall, I've been very surprised with how nice people are.
What do you think Noah has gotten out of this? He is 11 years old. He doesn't quite have that adult perspective, but this has got to be a really influential event in his life.
Oh, totally. I've been joking with him that he's going to have this record on his resume before he even starts working.
Before he starts middle school.
But I know. He's had a really good time, I think, just being one-on-one with his dad. And he's got to meet so many different people, a lot of people from different backgrounds and different cultures even. And he's met a lot of type 1 families and a lot of type 1 moms, especially. They'll track him down and they'll just fall out of their car and they'll come and love on him because he reminds them of their child. And, so he's just had to, I've seen him mature this year. He is just so gracious with people, and he is still the biggest hugger. If you get a chance to meet him in person, he is a hugger and he's a squeezer. So people do not forget his hugs.
That's great. Have you had any problems? How to put this in perspective, because I'm a mom of a kid with type 1 too.
Right.
With diabetes. I'm sure you've had your days where it's behaved and days where you have not, but any major challenges or things you've learned along the way?
Nothing major.
Great.
We have been so fortunate. He's had his highs, he's had his lows, but nothing that has been scary or anything like that. It's all been manageable. We had one short bout of a tummy virus. And I mean, with him, it lasted 24 hours. We've just had really great success. And so for that, it's a sigh of relief.
That's great. And so what's the plan in terms of heading home?
I'm going to let Robert fill you in on that.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Perfect.
I'm just the support mom.
Yeah. Well, don't you have another child though, right?
We have 2 kids.
Yeah.
We have John and Angela.
So how's that been going for them?
Oh, they still think this whole thing is a party. John is, he's a pro at getting in and out of hotels, and he he always has really great opinions. Oh, we stayed at a hotel, I think it was last week, and they put us in a room that had a king and a pull-out and a jacuzzi tub in the corner.
Ooh.
And my second-born thought this was the best hotel ever. So the kids got to enjoy it.
That's fun.
Hello.
Hi, Noah. How are you?
I'm good.
Good. I'm Stacey. We spoke last year before you started walking. What's your day like on the road? You get up, you just hit the road, you start walking. Tell me what it's like when you're out there.
Well, I get up, yawn a whole lot, put my clothes on, test myself, jack around on an iPad for an hour, then get to and then pack out, and then we're in the car for 10 minutes, so I get to jack around on the iPad again. This time I could try to figure something out. And then we stop, we load the stroller, and then we get walking. Mom, I think she takes a nap.
I like your mom. I would take a nap too. What's the farthest you've walked in a day? Do you know?
26.5.
Wow. Where was that?
Up in Kansas.
Wow. Was it really flat?
We also had some marathon days in Missouri too, but yeah.
So you've spent every day pretty much just walking with your dad since I last talked to you.
No, we take Sundays off.
Sure. Well,
Not every day.
But I mean, when you're walking, you're always walking with your dad?
Yes. Sometimes with my brother and sister. Very rarely, Mom.
What do you and your dad talk about? Or do you just kind of walk in silence now?
I'm silent for most of the day, but when I do talk, I ask questions.
Excellent.
Like, how does a nuclear reactor work?
Have you enjoyed meeting other families and kids with type 1?
Yes. Actually, spend time being with families is actually exciting. It's always different. Compared to the hotels, I got a pretty good idea what you could expect.
Yeah. Are you glad you did this?
Yes.
Why?
Well, we're promoting a cure for diabetes, so we're bringing awareness and we're also bringing funds.
Yeah, but you've walked really far away. Is it worth it?
Yes.
Anything else you wanted to say about walking around all the way across America?
We're this close to the cure and we need your help.
Good morning.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great.
All right.
How are you?
I'm doing really well. So I was saying to your wife the last time we talked, you hadn't taken the first step yet, and here you are almost done. How has it been? Any big surprises along the way?
Yes. Yeah. So in a year, we've learned so much about the diabetes community and just the disease itself, talking to the different researchers, because this is going to be our 7th research facility that we've actually visited with and talked to different people about, the status of research and where they're at with things. And then with NIH funding and just the whole spectrum of everything that's been going on, it's just been, an education all on its own.
How is Noah holding up? He said he walked 26 miles in one day.
Yeah, so he's done what we call marathon days. He's done 5 of them.
Wow.
And we did those in Tennessee, Missouri, and Kansas. And then once we hit altitude, it slowed us down. And then now the daylight is shorter, so we don't go that dark. We don't go into the dark. So we're ending like 5 o'clock in the evening now. So it's harder to get the miles in on a longer day. So like this week we're in Seattle Metro, so we have sidewalk and we have street lights and stuff, so we can go until like 6 p.m. But we'll probably average somewhere around 15, 16 miles a day while we're going through the Metro, and then we have the final week. So we're like 160 miles from finishing. So he's holding up phenomenally. So of the 300 people that have crossed America that can prove it, he's the only one we've talked to that actually gained weight. Everyone else loses weight when they do this. So he's gained a roughly 12 pounds.
I'm laughing because, he's 11 years old. He's got to be eating everything in sight.
Right. Yeah. He eats, some days he'll eat 5,000 calories. Yeah. Like he can eat. And he burns it because his metabolism is just like, so we have to literally every 3 hours. So trying to keep up with that a little bit can be challenging depending on where we're at remotely. And then lately we've gotten cold and wet. We got snowed on a couple times. And so it's harder to, feed and eat and take a break in the weather. So it's been a little bit of a hiking adventure.
We will likely air this after or right around the finish. We're talking to you, as you said, just about a week or so to go. What is the finish going to be like? Is there anything planned? Is it just a quiet family? How are you marking it?
So the city of Blaine, so I reached out to them over the summertime, and I got a hold of the public works people, and then the city council kind of jumped in, and so they're planning an event. There's a group of people, and so if you want to look on the Facebook page, it's Noah's March to the Arch. So there's a peace arch up there that was built from the War of 1812, from Britain, American War of 1812. That was like the peace arch, and it kind of drew the line of the Canadian-U.S. border was the purpose of it. So that Facebook page has got a whole bunch of threads of the city itself is really trying to put an event together so they can, really just congratulate Noah on what he's doing. So we have the day of, we're starting about 6 miles outside of town and letting people come with us, and the law enforcement is going to kind of be hovering depending on how big the crowd gets.
Cool.
To kind of put on the final kind of miles. And then we're going to go to the marina, touch the water, and then a mile later is the peace arch. So he'll actually be technically in Canada for the finish. And so we're expecting somewhere between 100 and 150 people to kind of be there. And then later that evening, we're having they're throwing us a little party, which is phenomenal. They're getting just like, they've been really receptive and really warm and welcoming. So we're really excited about that.
Has anybody else walked with you along the way? I mean, I didn't think about that. That's interesting.
Yes. So we've had a variety of different people come out and go with us. The biggest group is what they call crossers, the people that have actually crossed America on foot. So we've interviewed 10 of them, and they're the ones that come out, and they usually spend the day with us, like hours. And it's funny, the earlier ones couldn't believe that a kid was doing it because they didn't remember how tough it was for them. So the last guy that just came out, he actually crossed in 1989. So he had no cell phones, no Google,
wow.
He had a backpack. That's a totally. So that was, almost 30 years ago, and so his experience is totally different than our experience. But he came out recently. But a lot of people have come out just to kind of see, is this real? Is this kid really doing it? And then we have diabetes groups come out and go with them, and so he's spent a few miles with type 1s. And then, ironically, the homeschool community in the western United States, like once we got through Missouri, we had a lot of homeschool families try to find us because they're just fascinated with how do you homeschool. And it's been we had a pocket in Oregon, Idaho border where there's the Mennonites, and they were really fascinated by Noah. We couldn't take pictures with them because they have a thing that they don't like their pictures being taken, so we don't have any. But there was a 3-day stretch where it was just groups of them at a time would come out and spend a few miles with him because they were just, how do you do this exactly, and what do you talk about, and how does that happen? So, and then like parents that are just, hey, they want their kid to go do something. And so we've had about once a month, we've had some random parent who just saw what we were doing and like, my kid needs to have a focus or have a dream, and we want him to go do something. And here's a kid trying to do something other than himself.
Yeah.
And those kids are usually a little heavier, and they win really fast. They wear out really fast. They're usually good for a mile or two, and then they're done.
What are you guys going to do when this is over? Are you going home? What's next?
So we have some media and some research facilities. We're going to be in the Bay Area. So there's a group Beyond Type 1 that we're doing a meetup with them in the Bay Area. And then we've reached out to the one research group at Stanford, and we don't have confirmation on that yet, but that'll be the following week. The 13th is our meetup with Beyond Type 1. And then the 14th, we're in San Diego with a group called Diabetes Research Connection. Mm-hmm. And they do the early career grants for proof of concept. And so we're meeting with them. And then the first the only researcher that actually put miles on with NOAA, his name is Dr. C.C. King, and he's at UCSD. And we're doing a meetup with them December 14th in San Diego. And that'll be interesting because we haven't seen Dr. King in almost a year. Wow. And he actually came out. He was in the Keys studying dolphins because dolphins are the only mammals that they can turn their pancreases on and off. And there's a dolphin hospital there. So he just happened to be there when we were in the Keys, and he did 7 Mile Bridge with us, which was that was a brutal day.
Oh, my gosh.
Then after that, December 16th, I get on a bicycle, and I bicycle from Santa Monica to Savannah, Georgia, perpetuating Noah's March story, and then Noah gets to go to the major cities along the southern route. We don't have it posted yet, but we have Phoenix, El Paso, Dallas, Houston.
All right, so you're going back east on a bike?
Yes, on a bicycle.
Is Noah doing this with you, or is he putting his feet up?
No, he's not. No, he's putting his feet. Well, he's not strong enough on a bicycle yet.
Yeah.
So that's a different. He'll do a bicycle event across America. He's very excited about that. He's just not. His bicycle skills on traffic is a little. He needs to be a little stronger.
So Noah's March is finished, but you all are not going home and going back to, quote, your regular life.
Not yet. So the Noah's March itself is going to go all the way. So I bicycle across, and I'll be finished January 20th, somewhere in there. And then January 27th, we go back down to Key West. We start at the buoy again, and we drive. We call it a thank you tour. We're going to drive through the exact route he just did, meeting with the researchers again, meeting with more families again, promoting advocacy again for the next 4 months. So February, March, April, and May, we'll be driving the exact route, talking to different research facilities. Hey, what's changed in the year? What do you guys need? What's going on? The different groups, talking to different groups again about promoting their events and reaching out with a lot of the people that we just kind of didn't connect with when we went through originally. Noah's March itself will be continuing until June 2nd. And then once we finish that driving thank you advocacy part of it, then we'll see. Noah's wanting to cross Australia and New Zealand on foot. So we will. So National Geographic is looking at his application to help sponsor him. And so if that actually comes through, then we'll have the funds to do that. So we'll see if that happens or not. If he crosses 2 continents, then he goes into a different type of he's a world crosser now. And if he does 4 continents, then he'll hold a world record for being the youngest person across the world. And so that's a difference. Well, but right now we're putting a pin in that one. We'll see.
Well, keep us posted.
It's just about trying to bring the one thing we noticed in the diabetes communities and like in your Facebook groups is there's a lot of people who are trying to focus on like management and diet, but none of them really are connecting with research facilities or what's the status of research or what can be done about where research is going and who's actually doing what exactly. All
right, so let's keep talking. I mean, not today, but let's keep talking about what's next for you guys. Keep me in the loop. And I'm excited to hear about the finish and your amazing accomplishment here. I hope everything goes well and it's a safe and happy end. And post pictures and let us know.
Yes, we have about 200 hours of video and somewhere around 23,000 photos at this point, and we've posted less than 1% of what we haven't had time to really post anything yet. So hopefully when this finishes, we'll have time to post a little bit more and get some more stuff out there. But yeah, we're excited about continuing this and bringing advocacy as much as we can. And, we're hoping that we can push researchers or industries into just trying to get more focus on a cure.
Sounds great. Well, I really appreciate you coming back on and talking to me, and I'm glad it's gone so well. I cannot believe how much they are still going to do. It's going to be pretty wild, so we'll continue to check in on them. But man, they may become world travelers. We shall see. But this trip was 4,000 miles almost by foot. That is some pretty unbelievable stuff there. Okay, so what else is on the docket for this week? Huge response to our announcement that No Foods is coming on board as a sponsor and our first giveaway. So that was all on social media. Please check the Facebook page, Diabetes Connections, and find out more about our partnership with No Foods. Our next giveaway will be January 2nd, the show that airs along. Our next giveaway will be the first week in January. And every week after that for 2018, they are going big time to help you experience the No Foods yumminess. And I'll keep you posted on what we like the best. I had the bread today. I find the bread to be just a little bit sweet, so I don't eat it as a sandwich most of the time. I am newly gluten-free, and I like the bread kind of as maybe just like a little plain bread and butter with tea or coffee. I haven't tried it with avocado yet. I'm not a millennial, but I can enjoy my avocado toast. So I'll keep you posted on that. It should be fun to try all the different foods. Big thank you to JDRF in Tampa. I was there recently speaking to a JDRF summit. Lots of fun and wonderful people there. And my favorite, there was an older gentleman. We were doing a whole thing on social media, a whole breakout session on it. And he raises his hand and he said, "Stacey." I said, "Yes, yeah, what's up?" He goes, "I love your emails. Keep them coming." And I was like, wow. So if you don't know what he's talking about, I send out a weekly email. It's my newsletter, and it's a reminder and links to the show so you never miss an episode. But I also put information in there that I do not talk about during the show because there are some things that are just better read than heard. We used to call that clip in save when it was newspaper days, and you'd cut it out and kind of save it. And I like doing that with internet information because it's just easier than me talking about it and going on, kind of like I'm doing right now. We have one more show this calendar year. Next week's show is the last in December. We are taking the week of Christmas off, but we'll be back here next week with more news and information for you all about diabetes. I kind of sounded like one of my local newscasts I used to do. I should dig up one of those old promos. Oh my gosh, how embarrassing. Anyway, thank you as always to my editor, John Buchanan. He is fantastic with audio editing solutions. I really enjoy working with him, and he puts up with all of my nonsense. And thank you as you listen. It's a privilege to spend an hour every week with people who really get it. I'm Stacey Sims, and I'll see you back here next week.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.